If you don't know Zeen Chin, you are definitely missing out. Or maybe you know Zeen Chin for his paintings. However, he does these really cool drawings and these really cool characters. They're just so interesting to look at. And what I want to try and do is see if I can create a character that will fit into Zeen Chin's universe. Okay, let's have a look at Zeen Chin's line quality. So generally speaking, the lines are quite uniform, not much variation in thickness or size, opacity, generally quite uniform. I think it fits this style quite well, because it's quite cartoony, quite anime. And you generally see that in anime styles. The line thickness doesn't vary too much. Right, and you can see he's using a square brush with some texture, and I'll use this same brush when I do my attempt as well. Right, so not much variation in the line thickness. So whenever you're looking at an artist, and one thing you want to look out for is what kind of lines do they use. You need to look at the variation, opacity, even the speed of their lines. Fast lines, slow lines, are they smooth? Does it have like some, are the lines quite squiggly? Short lines, long lines, lots to observe when you're studying from other artists' line quality. Okay, next we have the shapes. So Zeen Chin tends to use, I'd say realistic shapes, especially with clothing. The clothing is more on the realistic side. So you'll see, he shows a lot of folds. The more you simplify, the number of folds that you show, decreases, right? So Zeen Chin tends to like to show a lot of clothing folds. Right, and it just makes the shapes more realistic as a result. However, given the style is quite anime in nature, you'll see the eye shapes are quite anime, even the hair shapes as well are also quite anime, depending on the drawing as well. Some of them have more realistic shapes, some of them have more animation shapes. So here, for example, you can see the clothing is quite realistic, even the hand, lots of like he's showing like the wrinkles in the hand and stuff like that. Even the leg shapes are more on the realistic side as well. Alright, even you look at stuff like this, it's showing a lot of wrinkles and it's a lot closer to realism. However, sometimes you will see him use animation shapes, like in this case. Right, you can see all the shapes are very smooth, smooth shapes, very bold shapes. It's not like he's not including tiny bumps in all these sort of places. Like, look at this. These are more animation shapes. So you will see him use that as well. Alright, so it's a mixture. And I guess it just depends on what he wants to draw that day and what he's in the mood for. I have a suspicion that he may have studied animation at some point. I have noticed that artists, like illustrators that are good with expressions and these sort of animation shapes, they tend to have studied some amount of animation when they were younger, or if they went to art school. I don't know Zeen Chin's history, but I have a suspicion that he may have studied animation at some point, because he's obviously really good at it. If you want the best expressions, you got to go to animation for that. So how about the colors, the color palettes that Zeen Chin uses? So what you will notice is that he tends to use less saturated colors. Although it doesn't look that way, he is using less saturated colors. And the reason they look so good is because of the way grays, they work quite nicely together. So if you were just color picking, let's say this one, right? So I don't know if you can see that, but the value is quite high, not too saturated. And let's just pick a saturated color. It looks quite saturated, but if you look at my my slider, this isn't too saturated. However, the way the colors just work against each other, it makes things pop out easily, and it's easy on the eyes. So you'll notice that pretty much all the colors that he likes to use are on the higher end of the value scale. You won't see him use dark values as much, at least from what I've observed. So all these colors are on the higher end of the value scale. Okay, and then go back to the animation shapes. Really, really nice. So like in this case, for instance, the colors look quite dark, but if you can see on my slider, it's just below 50, even though it looks quite dark. So he almost never goes below 50 with his color choices in these drawings. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at artists. It's another thing to keep in mind is, you know, what kind of colors do they use? Think about the saturation, the value. Where do they sit on the value scale? Right, and here we have a one that's made up of just really nice pastel colors, and it really harmonizes. All the colors work together really nicely. That's something I want to keep in mind when I'm choosing colors for my attempt. And the other thing as well is the number of colors that he chooses. So generally speaking, I want to say he uses around, let's say 3 colors, 4 colors, or even 2 colors sometimes. And the rest of the colors are sort of just kind of, you know, as Marco Bucci calls it, they're like color notes. So they're just, you know, little bits of other colors. But generally speaking, you'll see 2, 3, 4 main colors. There'll be like 2 or 3 colors that make up the majority of the drawing. Okay, so the next element of style here is the subject matter. So, you know, he's always drawing these characters, right? And the way I see it, this makes up a big part of his style, right? Without this, it just wouldn't be the same. I mean, obviously, but it's just what makes it so interesting, right? It makes it fun to look at. If you've seen interviews with Zeen Chins, he gets his inspiration from his childhood, Taoist temple, and, you know, there's modern fashion in there as well. You've got the horror elements in there. And you can see, you know, the jacket that they're wearing, you know, these, I guess, jeans, very reminiscent of, you know, modern fashion. You know, you've got these brands in there, you know, sweets. He's taken all of this together and, you know, just using that to create this very interesting, you know, just adding these very interesting elements to his style. And it just makes it so fun to look at. The way he can just be so creative with his stuff. It's really inspiring. And that's why it's good to look at, get inspiration from everywhere. So this is a big element of his style. And I think it's going to be one of the most difficult parts for me to try and replicate. Because, you know, I just don't have the same creativity level that he does. Very, very important element of his style. Another thing for you to think about when analyzing an artist's style is what kind of things do they draw? And lastly, we need to consider what kind of perspective does Zeen Chin draw in? What kind of camera lens does he use? From what I've seen, he tends to go between wide angle lenses and medium lenses. So you can see here, we've got a wide angle lens drawing going on. Very easy to see with this curvature. And again, he's just so good at drawing. It's incredible. Definitely pay attention to what he's doing. You'll see him drawing all sorts of angles. Just really, really good at drawing. I know a lot of people know Zeen Chin for the illustrations that he does. But I think he's so good at the illustrations. You know, one reason for that is because of how good he is at drawing, right? You can see all his paintings on Artstation or whatever, and the ones where he shows a process, the drawing always comes first. So, I mean, there's a lot of painters out there that will tell you good painting starts from good drawing. And of course, you got just these kind of medium lenses, right? Not much distortion going on. I'd say it's more on the wider angle lens, I'd say. So the perspective, the camera lens that he's using is more on the wide and sometimes closer to the medium end of the scale. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I'm not too good with these wide angle poses, or just using that lens in general. That's just another thing to keep in mind. The camera lens that your favorite artists like to use. Okay, just a quick thing before we move on. I created a poll on the community tab page, but I don't think community posts are being pushed out as much. So if you're interested in mentorships and an art club, go over there and just vote, and it will just give you an idea of how many of you are interested. Because this is something I want to start very, very soon. But I just want to know how many people are interested so I can know what platform to use. And also stage 3 of my figure drawing series is up on Gumroad. So if you're interested in that, link is in the description. Okay, so let's get into my attempt. So first thing I did was find a cool pose, because Zeen Chins is using cool poses too. So I found this on Pinterest and I used it as my starting point. All right, so I used that, and then as you can see, I did change the pose, but I kept the gun pose and like the finger on the face. All right, so I started there. So the next thing I did was I cleaned up my sketch and I added a face similar to ones that Zeen Chins draws. So I just cleaned that up. I cleaned up the hands because I don't want to struggle with that later. So the next thing I did was I drew the clothing on top. So the clothing I used from the same reference that I got the pose from, or the inspiration for the pose from. All right, so it's still there, right? As you can see. Of course, since my sketch is in a different pose, like I changed the pose, I had to figure out the folds and all that kind of stuff, which is something I'm working on because I don't want to be trapped into having to rely on reference for the folds. Like I want to understand how they work and be able to draw them on any figure, no matter what pose they're in. I want to understand the physics and all that stuff. So we got that done, okay? But obviously, as it is, it's not good enough to fit into Zeen Chins' world. So we got to go back to Zeen Chins' artwork and just make notes of the things that he likes to add in his drawings. So I did that. I then went over my drawing here and I made a plan, because unlike Zeen Chins, I can't just do this stuff on the fly, all right? I'm nowhere near as creative as Zeen Chins. So I looked at the stuff that he likes to add. So I noticed, he likes to add these stitches, these tattoos, these texts. He has these tags, these like talismans. And you can see I also drew an arrow for the eye path, right? So if we were starting from the feet, I wanted to create a nice eye path going all the way up to the face. And also I wanted to consider, where is my simple, where's my complex? Okay. And yeah, so I spent time doing that. And the next thing I did was I used this plan to then modify the clothing. So with all those elements that I planned for, I added them in. All right, so I drew the stitches that he likes to do. I put like some shapes and some tattoos. I did all of that. I did a talisman over here. I did some text. And I think this is quite hard because I don't want to put detail everywhere. I needed to balance things out. And that's what the plan was for. Because if I just have, elements all over the place, then I might be breaking that eye path. I might be breaking the simple versus complex. So having the plan there for me, that really helped. So once this was all done, so obviously at this stage, this isn't the kind of lines that Zeen likes to use. This is the kind of line that I like to use. I like to, force myself to use these very basic brushes because they help me a lot. However, I do have the brush that Zeen Chins uses. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I'm pretty sure it's the same brush. So I got that brush and I cleaned up the lines, or rather I created new line work with the brush that he uses, or I think he uses. It should be because it's his brush pack. Of course, I took that brush and I adjusted it to my liking. Either way, we've got our line work in place. So now all that's left to do is color. And I found this pretty difficult. So again, I stuck with the general color palette from the reference I started with, right? So the pink and the blue and the white, and here we go. So I stuck with the blue pink palette, and then I added accents of other colors. So you can see I got the green in there. What else? A tiny bit of purple and some yellow. All right, and then once I decided on those colors, I chose not to break out of it. So yeah, I think this part was probably the most challenging, but also the style elements as well that was quite challenging as well. But there you go. And of course I had to add the text in the same way Zeen Chins does. Here is the result. I mean, what do you think? Could this character be a part of Zeen Chins' world, or would they be turned away at the gates? I think it turned out okay. Obviously there's things I would probably change now that it's complete. But either way, it's a learning experience. I'm glad that I did it, and I look forward to doing more of these because I have another artist who I've been looking at, and I really love their shapes, and I want to do a study of their work as well in the same way. And I think you should do it too. Find artists that you like and try and draw something in their style. So in the same way I analyzed Zeen Chins' style elements, do the same thing, plan out your drawing, see if you can make something that would fit in their world. Just trying to understand how they did this and see if you can do it too. There's so many little lessons in there for you. But yeah, that'll be all. Yeah, look forward to that next video for the next style attempt. Yeah, but that'll be all. Again, go to the community tab and vote if you can. Just so I just want to know how many people want to be part of the art club and want to take mentorships with me. All right, I'll see you all in the next one.